Family, let's talk about something we don't like to admit out loud, but we've all felt in the quiet corners of our hearts. Those moments when your kindness starts feeling like a burden, when your generosity gets mistaken for weakness, when your compassion gets misread as permission, and suddenly the very love you poured becomes the very thing people use against you. And there comes a moment when you start asking yourself, why does my kindness turn into disrespect? Not because you regret being good, but because you're tired of being mishandled while carrying a pure heart. But hear me, the problem is not your kindness. The problem is the environment your kindness lives in. When a chosen woman is kind, she is kind from her spirit. She is kind from her calling. She is kind because of who God made her to be, not because she's desperate for approval. But some people don't know what to do with a heart like yours. They don't understand your depth. They don't value your softness. They don't appreciate your grace. And instead of rising to meet the purity of your intentions, they take advantage of the access you give. This is where God steps in. Because there comes a season in your life where he starts showing you the difference between kindness and people-pleasing, between compassion and self-betrayal, between humility and self-neglect. He starts opening your eyes to the places where your kindness has been poured into the wrong hands. He begins revealing who honors your heart and who drains it. He begins teaching you that boundaries are not a lack of kindness, they are a protection for it. Family, your kindness isn't the problem. Your heart isn't the issue. Your compassion isn't the weakness. What God is doing in this season is teaching you how to protect what is pure, how to guard what is sacred, how to pour without emptying yourself, and how to love without losing yourself. Because the moment you understand why kindness turns into disrespect, you begin stepping into a version of yourself that still loves deeply, but no longer tolerates being mishandled. Let's talk about why this happens and how God is calling you to rise above it. Family, understanding the difference between godly kindness and self-betrayal is one of the greatest awakenings you will ever experience. Because for so long, many of us were taught to be kind at the expense of ourselves. We were taught that kindness means saying yes when our spirit is saying no. Staying silent when our boundaries are being crossed, giving more even when we're empty, and showing up for people who never show up for us. We confuse being Christ-like with being careless toward our own heart. We confuse love with self-abandonment. We confuse compassion with allowing ourselves to be mistreated. But God never called you to betray yourself in the name of kindness. There comes a moment where God begins to shine a light on the difference between the kindness he designed and the kindness the world has manipulated. Godly kindness flows from strength, not depletion. It flows from clarity, not confusion. It flows from truth, not guilt. It flows from love, but it does not require self-erasure. Godly kindness is generous but grounded, compassionate but discerning, loving but wise. It gives without losing identity. It serves without surrendering dignity. It sacrifices without destroying the self God is trying to build. Self-betrayal, however, feels very different. It is the kindness that costs you yourself. It is the kind of giving that empties your spirit instead of expanding it. It is the way you say yes while your soul aches. It is the smile you wear while your boundaries are being violated. It is the patience you offer while someone mistreats you. It is the forgiveness you hand out freely while refusing to hold them accountable. It is the silence you choose when your heart is screaming for you to speak up. Self-betrayal is the internal sacrifice of your needs, your worth, your emotional well-being, and your God-given identity to maintain a false image of kindness. You can tell when kindness becomes self-betrayal because it begins to drain you, weaken you, confuse you, and alter your identity. It's the kindness that leaves your chest tight and your spirit uneasy. The kindness that causes resentment to grow quietly. The kindness that keeps you in relationships God has been trying to pull you out of. The kindness that causes you to settle for disrespect because you don't want to be mean, difficult, or unloving. The kindness that makes you responsible for other people's comfort while no one considers your discomfort. That is not godly kindness. That is fear disguised as love. Godly kindness doesn't require your silence, it requires your strength. It does not call you to be a doormat, it calls you to be a disciple. Kindness does not ask you to dim your light so others can shine. It does not ask you to avoid confrontation so others feel secure. It does not ask you to pretend everything is okay when it is breaking you spiritually. Godly kindness is rooted in truth, and truth demands honesty, boundaries, accountability, and wisdom. Self-betrayal often begins with good intentions. You want to be caring, you want to be helpful, you want to keep peace, you want to reflect Christ. But somewhere along the line, the desire to be loving becomes entangled with the fear of being rejected, misunderstood, or unloved. You start using kindness as a shield to protect yourself from abandonment. You start using kindness as currency, hoping that if you give enough, people won't hurt you. You start offering kindness to prove your worth, but kindness that comes from fear instead of fullness will always lead you into places where you are undervalued and misused. Godly kindness flows from identity. Self-betrayal flows from insecurity. Godly kindness comes from knowing who you are in God. Self-betrayal comes from forgetting who you are in God. And this is where the transformation begins. When God starts reminding you of your worth, He begins showing you that you are not called to be everyone's emotional dumping ground. You are not called to be the rescuer of adults who refuse to grow. You were not called to sacrifice your peace to maintain someone else's dysfunction. You were not called to prove your love by enduring disrespect. God did not create you to be emptied by people who refuse to be filled by Him. As God begins healing you, you start recognizing the signs of self-betrayal. You notice when your spirit feels uneasy after saying yes. You notice when you shrink in conversations to keep the peace. You notice when you overextend yourself to avoid disappointing someone. You notice when guilt manipulates you into giving more than you should. You notice when you suppress your needs to protect someone else's ego. You notice when you excuse behavior you know is damaging. And as you become aware, God begins calling you into a healthier type of kindness, one that honors others without dishonoring yourself. Godly kindness includes boundaries. Jesus Himself had boundaries. He loved deeply but did not let everyone close. He served many but retreated often. He spoke truth even when it offended. He protected His peace. He didn't let guilt or manipulation dictate His decisions. If Jesus, the perfect model of love, refused to betray Himself to please others, then why should you? Godly kindness is strong enough to say no, wise enough to discern motives, bold enough to confront wrongs, and secure enough to walk away when necessary. Self-betrayal, on the other hand, keeps you trapped in cycles where you give beyond your capacity and receive less than you deserve. It keeps you tolerating disrespect because you don't want to lose the relationship. It keeps you silent because you fear the reaction. It keeps you pretending because truth feels too heavy. It keeps you connected to people who drain you. It keeps you denying your own needs until you no longer recognize your voice, your desires, your identity. Self-betrayal is kindness that costs you your soul. Godly kindness empowers you. It makes you feel lighter. It strengthens your spirit. It aligns with your purpose. It deepens your peace. It blesses you while blessing others. You walk away from moments of godly kindness feeling filled, not emptied. You feel grounded, not lost. You feel present, not erased. Godly kindness aligns your love with wisdom and your compassion with truth. One of the biggest differences between godly kindness and self-betrayal is this: godly kindness flows from freedom while self-betrayal flows from fear. fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, fear of disappointing someone, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing a relationship. But God says perfect love casts out fear. When your kindness is rooted in fear, it becomes a prison. When your kindness is rooted in God, it becomes power. You can be loving without being used. You can be kind without being controlled. You can be compassionate without being depleted. You can be available without being accessible to everyone. You can serve others without sacrificing yourself. God never asked you to break yourself to keep other people comfortable. He never asked you to choose kindness over truth. He never asked you to silence your voice so someone else could feel powerful. When God begins transforming you, he teaches you to love with clarity, not confusion. He shows you that the most sacred kindness you can offer is the kindness you show yourself. Because when you honor yourself, you honor the God who created you. When you protect your heart, you protect the purpose he placed inside of you. When you set boundaries, you allow God to filter who has access to you. When you say no to what drains you, you say yes to the destiny he is shaping. Family, godly kindness is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is strength wrapped in grace. It is love wrapped in truth. It is compassion wrapped in discernment. And as God teaches you this difference, you will no longer hand your kindness to those who treat it like a convenience. You will no longer betray yourself for the comfort of others. You will no longer confuse humility with invisibility. You will no longer allow your kindness to be an entryway for disrespect. Once you understand the difference between godly kindness and self-betrayal, you rise into a version of yourself that is loving but not naive, generous but not drained, compassionate but not compromised, kind but not controlled. And that is the woman God always intended you to be. Family, one of the deepest truths God will ever reveal to you is this. A lack of boundaries turns kindness into an invitation for disrespect. Not because your heart is wrong, not because your intentions are wrong, but because unprotected kindness becomes a space where the wrong people feel entitled to take, to drain, and to misuse what was never meant to be freely accessible. When God created you with a soft heart, he never intended for that softness to live without structure. Godly kindness requires protection, and where there are no boundaries, kindness gets misinterpreted as availability, as permission, and eventually as weakness. Many of us were raised to believe that saying no was unkind, that setting limits was selfish, that protecting our peace was rude or unchristian. We were taught to give endlessly, to forgive without accountability, to make room for everyone, to let people mean well, to avoid confrontation, to keep peace at any cost. But a peace that costs you your identity, your energy, your self-worth, or your emotional safety is not peace. It's bondage. It's a silent form of self-destruction. Before boundaries, your kindness becomes a wide open door, and people who were never meant to step inside your life walk right through like they own the place. People who don't value you begin to feel entitled to you. People who see your generosity begin to expect it as a requirement. People who recognize your compassion begin to exploit it. People who notice your forgiveness begin to count on it to clean their mess. People who sense your patience begin to stretch it past its limits. Not because they are strong, but because your boundaries are weak or non-existent. Without boundaries, disrespect always finds a way in, not because people are bold, but because you have unintentionally taught them how to treat you. You taught them that you don't say no. You taught them that you tolerate inconsistency. You taught them that last-minute changes don't bother you. You taught them that you overgive. You taught them that you accept crumbs. You taught them that your kindness comes without consequences. And whatever you teach people through your lack of boundaries, they learn quickly and deeply. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors that you control. Boundaries tell people how to treat you. Boundaries tell people where you end and where they begin. Boundaries teach people that your heart is a gift, not a playground. Kindness without boundaries becomes self-betrayal, but kindness with boundaries becomes power. It becomes clarity. It becomes alignment. It becomes protection. It becomes instruction for others on what is and is not acceptable around your spirit. When God begins elevating you, he doesn't just give you blessings, he teaches you boundaries. Because you cannot steward a higher version of yourself while allowing lower behaviors to have unlimited access. God cannot take you into new seasons while you're still saying yes to what drains you. He cannot let you rise while you're still overexposing your heart to people who haven't earned the right to it. So he allows discomfort to build boundaries. He allows betrayal to sharpen boundaries. He allows disrespect to awaken boundaries. He allows emotional exhaustion to force boundaries. Many times, the very disrespect you're battling is the catalyst God uses to teach you to protect yourself. Boundaries begin with awareness of what hurts you, awareness of what drains you, awareness of what triggers you, awareness of what interrupts your peace, awareness of who brings confusion, awareness of who benefits from your softness but refuses to honor it, awareness of where you lose yourself. You cannot set a boundary around what you're unwilling to acknowledge. Awareness is the first step toward protecting your kindness. The next step is clarity. Clear boundaries are specific, not vague. They are spoken, not implied. They are consistent, not adjustable, based on who you're dealing with. Many times, disrespect grows because people are confused, not about your worth, but about what you allow. Clarity removes confusion. Clarity says, I can be kind and still have limits. I can love you and still not tolerate certain behavior. I can serve you and still protect myself. I can forgive you and still distance myself. I can be compassionate and still confront what's wrong. Boundaries also require courage. It is not easy to change patterns you've lived with for years. It is not easy to disappoint people who have grown accustomed to your overgiving. It is not easy to enforce limits with people who benefited from your lack of them. It is not easy to stand up for yourself when you've spent years prioritizing others. But courage is necessary for healing. Courage is necessary for growth. Courage is necessary for reclaiming your voice. Courage is necessary for redirecting your kindness into spaces where it is honored, not exploited. God gives you courage when he wants to elevate you. He strengthens your backbone. He sharpens your discernment. He amplifies your voice. He heightens your sensitivity. He makes it uncomfortable to stay in old patterns. He allows situations that force you to choose yourself, not because he wants you to harden your heart, but because he wants you to honor it. You cannot honor God while dishonoring the vessel he lives in. As you begin setting boundaries, something powerful happens. Your kindness becomes more meaningful. When people can no longer misuse it, they begin to value it. When access becomes earned, not automatic, they begin to respect it. When your yes becomes intentional, not forced, it becomes precious. When your energy becomes selective, it becomes sacred. Boundaries make your kindness shine brighter, flow stronger, and impact deeper because it is no longer diluted by disrespect. Another truth is this: the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will be the ones who resist them the most. They will call you difficult when you stop being convenient. They will call you selfish when you stop overgiving. They will call you rude when you stop accepting disrespect. They will call you cold when you stop allowing emotional labor without reciprocity. They will call you changed when you stop playing the role that fed their comfort. But their discomfort is not your concern. It is their consequence. A boundary is not a punishment, it is a standard. A standard for how you deserve to be treated, a standard for how you treat yourself, a standard for what your heart can hold, a standard that reflects the value God placed inside of you. You are not responsible for how others feel about your boundaries. You are responsible for protecting the version of yourself God is building. Without boundaries, your kindness becomes a magnet for users, takers, manipulators, and emotionally unavailable people. With boundaries, your kindness becomes a magnet for healthy relationships, mutual respect, balanced connections, and people who appreciate your heart instead of consuming it. Boundaries refine your circle. They filter your relationships. They protect your spirit. They guard your destiny. A boundary is also a form of worship. It is saying, God, I value the heart you gave me so much that I will not hand it carelessly to those who dishonor it. It is saying, I trust your voice more than I fear someone's disapproval. It is saying, I choose alignment over attachment. It is saying, I choose respect over comfort. It is saying, I choose obedience to your calling over staying where I don't belong. Family, kindness becomes disrespect only when it is offered without boundaries. You are not called to be endlessly available. You are not called to be emotionally drained. You are not called to be used as a crutch. You are not called to be a dumping ground. You are not called to sacrifice your soul to keep someone else comfortable. You are called to love with wisdom. You are called to give with discernment. You are called to serve with strength. You are called to be kind, but covered. When you set boundaries, your kindness becomes protected. Your heart becomes honored. Your spirit becomes respected. Your peace becomes guarded. Your identity becomes restored. And the kindness that God placed within you can finally flourish without being abused. Because kindness is holy, but boundaries make it safe. Family, one of the hardest but most liberating truths you will ever learn is this: some people misuse soft hearts they were never meant to hold. Not because your kindness is wrong, not because your love is too much, not because your intentions aren't pure, but because your heart was crafted by God to operate at a level of depth that some people simply do not have the capacity to honor. When a chosen woman loves, she loves deeply. When she gives wholeheartedly. When she supports fully. But not everyone is spiritually, emotionally, or morally equipped to handle a heart like yours. Most people interpret others through the lens of their own characters. So when your heart is pure, you assume other people operate from the same purity. When your motives are genuine, you assume their motives come from the same sincerity. When you love with loyalty, you assume their love carries the same weight. But the painful truth is, your heart makes sense to you, not to everyone else. And when someone who is unhealed, insecure, selfish, or immature encounters a heart like yours, they don't see its value. They see its usefulness. Some people misuse your kindness because it highlights their inner emptiness. Your patience exposes their impatience. Your compassion exposes their selfishness. Your loyalty exposes their instability. Your purity exposes their manipulation. Instead of rising to meet the standard your heart naturally sets, they lower the standard to remain comfortable. And when they can't reach the depth you offer, they begin to take from it. They begin to drain what they cannot reciprocate. They begin to expect what they cannot give. They begin to feel entitled to what they did not earn. You can tell when someone was never meant to hold your heart by the way they treat what you give. They take your softness as access. They treat your empathy as a resource. They accept your forgiveness as a guarantee. They view your loyalty as a default setting. They assume your availability is endless. They assume your love will binge forever. They assume your silence means consent. They assume your patience means permission. They assume your kindness means they can do whatever they want and still be welcomed back into your life. This happens because they were never assigned to steward a heart like yours. They were never taught how to handle something sacred. They were never disciplined enough to appreciate something rare. They were never healed enough to receive something healthy. They were never mature enough to honor something God crafted. And instead of acknowledging their lack of capacity, they mishandle your gift. A soft heart is a mirror. When someone is whole, it reflects beauty. When someone is broken, it reflects their dysfunction. Broken people often misinterpret softness as weakness. They confuse gentleness with gullibility. They mistake love for obligation. They see your heart as something to use rather than something to cherish. They don't see your emotional depth as treasure. They see it as leverage. Some people misuse your soft heart because it allows them to avoid accountability. As long as you're forgiving without boundaries, they never have to grow. As long as you're patient without limits, they never have to change. As long as you're accommodating without standards, they never have to mature. Your softness becomes their cushion. Your grace becomes their crutch. Your heart becomes their hiding place from self-reflection. But hear me clearly. Your heart is not the problem, their lack of integrity is. Your love is not the issue, their lack of character is. Your depth is not the weakness, their inability to rise to it is. Some people misuse your soft heart simply because they are intimidated by it. They cannot give what you give, so instead they take. They cannot match your emotional honesty, so instead they manipulate. They cannot love with your level of sincerity, so instead they perform. They cannot rise to your spiritual depth, so instead they diminish you. When someone is threatened by your capacity, they will sabotage the connection that exposes their lack. Others misuse your soft heart because they assume you will never leave. They assume your kindness means permanent access. They assume your loyalty means unconditional tolerance. They assume your empathy means you will always excuse their behavior. They assume your forgiveness means they can keep repeating the same patterns. But God is the God of boundaries, not bondage. And He will not allow your heart to remain mishandled forever. There comes a moment when God steps in, not to harden your heart, but to teach it wisdom, not to silence your love, but to strengthen your discernment, not to make you mean, but to make you mindful, not to stop you from giving, but to redirect your giving to people who honor it. When God begins elevating you, He reveals the difference between people who love your heart and people who love the benefits of your heart. Those who love you value your presence, your peace, your growth, your joy. Those who misuse you value your usefulness, your convenience, your generosity, your silence. One group protects your heart, the other group consumes it. God allows mistreatment not to break you, but to open your eyes. He lets you feel the weight of being misused so you can learn the importance of guarding your spirit. He lets you experience disrespect so you can recognize the necessity of boundaries. He lets the wrong people mishandle your heart so you can learn how to choose the right people next time. And one of the biggest signs someone was never meant to hold your heart is this: they take more than they give. They drain more than they pour. They expect more than they invest. They receive more than they reciprocate. Their presence exhausts you instead of uplifting you. Their inconsistency destabilizes you instead of supporting you. Their energy confuses you instead of comforting you. Your soft heart becomes a battlefield instead of a blessing. But when the right people are sent into your life, they treat your heart differently. They honor your vulnerability. They respect your boundaries. They value your presence. They protect your peace. They match your sincerity. They cherish your love instead of consuming it. They see your kindness as a gift, not an entitlement. They don't take from you. They pour into you. They don't drain your spirit. They nourish it. Family, the misuse of your soft heart is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of someone's inability to rise to it. You are not too emotional. You are not too kind. You are not too loving. You are not too much. You are simply deep in a world full of shallow hearts. And deep hearts are rarely understood by those who only know how to love on the surface. God is teaching you that your softness is holy, but it must be held by hands that are healed, committed, and aligned. He is teaching you that your compassion is powerful, but it must be poured into places that can honor it. He is teaching you that your heart is precious, but it must be protected by wisdom, not given away through fear. Some people misuse soft hearts they were never meant to hold. And when you finally understand that, you stop blaming yourself, you start healing yourself.